In our first story, the minority leader in Parliament, Haruna Iddrisu, has advised Vice President Dr. Bawumia to stop cheapening the second highest office of the country. The Tamale South MP said Dr. Bawumia should stop being a cheerleader for Ken Oforiatta, especially when he's presenting his budget statement to the country. According to him, the Tamale South MP said the Akufo-Addo government rode on the backs of Ghanaians with the pledge and promise to reduce their suffering, but they are only making things worse. He spoke to JoyNews ahead of the 2022 budget presentation.
Vice President Dr. Bawumia will have to stop cheapening the office of the Vice President and be a chair Vice President for the Finance Minister. That's profoundly wrong. You can't have a Vice President of the Republic accompany a Minister of Finance, then rises and even attempt to clap his hands in the Chamber of Parliament. No matter how exciting or stimulating the budget is, he ought to grow above that. Whoever gave them this advice is constitutionally succinct, but it depends upon which provision of the Constitution you are relying on. Under Article 179, which is the basis for the presentation of the budget, indeed, the President himself can present the budget or cause it to be presented on his behalf by any minister. That's why you saw the Honorable Chairman do it the other time. And now Minister Ken Oforiatta. So he must grow beyond this floor cheers in Parliament. It's not helpful. And to borrow the words of one of your interviewees, Kroma Eshi, I mean, nobody should expect anything better or assuring other than increased hardships in the country. Nobody should expect anything other than an attempt to inflict more economic pain. This government rode on the backs of Ghanaians with a pledge and promise to reduce the suffering of the Ghanaian people. You can go to their manifesto of 2016. There was a full page where they listed the suffering of the Ghanaian people they wanted to end. Today, they will only exacerbate the suffering. Today, they would only exacerbate the hardship. Today, they would only exacerbate taxes. Today, they would only exacerbate growing unemployment with its consequence on standard of living and the suffering of the Ghanaian people.
The MP also said the economy is on the path of unsustainable debts.
Though, I mean, there is a very, very limited amount of our entire budgetary picture that can be ascribed to the cost of...
so those little drops, if you ignore them, and then two, as we are speaking this morning, statutory funds, the District Assembly Common Fund, they have not even paid the second quarter of 2021. Yet they are going to present the budget for 2022. And yet you say the economy is doing well. Take another statutory fund like the Ghana Education Trust Fund, GET Fund. They are raking in 1.2 to 1.4 billion. Out of the 1.2 to 1.4 billion, 680,000 will be used to service debt. That is reckless borrowing, irresponsible borrowing. Particularly so when you ignore its governance institution, a minister, a board, and you go and create another private sector vehicle called Dachi. You take 1.2 billion and half of it is to service debt. Why?
Because they took a loan which came to Parliament for approval.
No, and we raised those issues.
Yes, but it was approved. I mean, that's
and I say we raised those issues. You remember the 1.5 billion they came for?
Yes.
So you cannot describe this as responsible borrowing. So now, within the next 2 to 3 years, GET Fund may as well just rake in money for purpose of debt service. Not for purpose of building robust infrastructure. I mean, any other government, conveniently. I mean, Nana Addo Dankwa inherited a debt of 122 by the Auditor General, 120 billion. As of yesterday, he had increased Ghana's debt portfolio to 335 billion. 76% of GDP, and say, hail me. Hail who? Anybody, if you can borrow this way, can sit there. You borrow 120. So be 120, add another 120, add another 120. So over 200% within just a period of 4 to 5 years.
So let me ask
so
this. Does
this economy is on a path of unsustainable debt. They will continue to spend huge sums of money, as I've indicated, close to 47% of tax revenue on debt.
Financial analyst Dr. Williams Papra has also been making some analysis of today's budget presentation.
Every government will borrow, but it's the borrowing strategy that is more important. If you look at what has happened to the increase of our debts, majority of them has come from the foreign investors through the euro bonds that we have gone into the market to borrow. So that is where the problem is. These euro bonds are also dollar or denominated. That's why we call the euro bond. And we also have, as a country, have an issue with we deal in cedi. Yeah. So there is this exchange rate effect anytime that we want to go and borrow from the side of the euro market. And that effect is what we have to look at. If you see what the finance minister tried to do in 2021, he was going to borrow more from a cedi-denominated angle in 2021 than borrowing from the foreign-denominated area where it's dollar or euro-denominated currency. So this is one strategy we have to focus on. As a country, we need to decide, can we let all the bonds that we are raising be locally, where we use our cedi to be a factor of the borrowing strategy? So instead of making it dollar denominated, can we get the investors to come into the country to buy our bonds here in Ghana? So that will be one strategy. In that case, we prevent the situation where we have an exchange rate risk. That is why currently our cedi is devaluing, because investors, most of them are cashing out and leaving. Anytime they are moving their money from the country, they have to be paid in their hard currency or dollar. So one strategy, Peter, I think that we can use in controlling the debt situation is focus on what type of strategy in terms of the debt that we are borrowing. What currencies are we going to borrow? Is it going to be a cedi denominated or a dollar denominated? I have always been saying that we as a country, as we follow we try to borrow within, though it has its own effect with crowding out and other things, but Ghana really is suffering from more the exchange rate risks because its impacts will trickle down to every other thing. So I'm expecting that the strategy finance minister should focus on is make sure that the 39 billion that we are projecting, about 60% should be within the country, and then the rest from outside.
A co-analyst, George Ankuma, who also featured on the show earlier, has been sharing some expectations and projections of today's presentation.
Government needs to look at how do we lessen our expenditure. The expenditure reduction here does not necessarily mean that you are not spending, but you are making some institutions self-sufficient to be able to take care of that, and then you not spend on them. Okay, the Honorable Information Minister did mention, for instance, issues around property rates. Property rates has been with us since the days of Adam. But how efficiently are we managing that? I believe that one way is that we can look at these local assemblies, reducing government expenditure on them, and they somehow be able to support themselves. And one of the areas is the property rates. Building capacity within the local assemblies to be able to collect. And he mentioned not necessarily increasing. The issue is not about increasing rates, as we continue to say, or tax rate. It's about efficiency in mobilization. How do we collect the taxes? How do we collect the levies? And so that alone, by government not spending, because he also mentioned the fact that most of the assemblies will be waiting for the common fund to come in. And so until the common fund comes in, they are not able to pay basic expenditures like sanitation expenses. they should be able to raise funds within to pay for those things so that government doesn't have to spend on that. So I believe that these are small areas that government can make the local assemblies more efficient to be able to collect the property rates and then boost up revenue. Government then will be able to save that much, okay, as far as expenditure into the local assemblies is concerned. And that can be channeled into something else. That will mean that you don't need to necessarily go for additional debts to be able to run the economy.
Let's go to my colleague Kwesi Parker-Wilson, and he's live in Parliament. Parker, has the Finance Minister arrived?
Well, the Finance Minister has arrived, but not in the Chamber of Parliament. He is currently in the Speaker's lobby. I see the Minority Leader, Haruna Iddrisu, calling on his members to assume their seat so that Parliament can commence the business of the day. It's almost a full house. Both sides of the House are all fully present, the MPP and the MPP. And of course, we know that the Francis Xavier Sosu, Mabadina MP, is also in Parliament today for the budget presentation. So the Minister is yet to appear in the chamber, but I can confirm to you that he is within the presence of Parliament.
All right, and I'm sure you've been speaking to some of the MPs. What have they been saying?
Well, largely it's a divided opinion with the minority and the majority. The majority is confident that this budget will bring some kind of relief to the ordinary Ghanaian, and as a matter of fact, would expect more job creation within this budget and a possible hint of the removal of road tolls. Whilst the minority is of the view that this budget is, in their own words, a funeral announcement and a budget that would further impose hardship on the ordinary Ghanaian. So next year or the next financial year, which is 2022, Ghanaians will go through a lot of struggle because of the tax measures, the introduction of new taxes, the upward review of taxes, among others. So they have been on a level of disagreement over what the budget would entail. But of course, in just about 15 to 20 minutes, we will have a better appreciation of what's contained in the budget. In fact, Mams, let me add this, that the delay for the presentation, I'm told by the majority, is that the Finance Minister was tweaking the budget. You recall that some weeks ago, there was an announcement by the GRA that NAPCO trainees should leave their post.
Yeah.
But just about 3 days ago, there has been another communication indicating that they should remain at post. Now, this has some budgetary implications, and we are told it's one of the reasons that delayed, because the minister was trying to make sure that they factor all of that into the budget before they present it to the House. And again, the members of Parliament have been raising concerns about their district common funds. We are told that that has also been factored into the budget, and that is why there's been some kind of delay. So there were last-minute amendments to all the things that were contained in the budget. Reason the Finance Minister just came to Parliament just about a few minutes ago, and soon who will appear before the floor for Ghanaians to listen to him on what he has to tell the people of this country.
All right, thank you very much. That's my colleague Kwesi Parker-Wilson, and he's live in Parliament for us. And that's where we end Joy News Today with me, Mapita CBD. Up next is Kojo Youngson and Evans Mensah with the budget conversation.